Hola amigos, bien o qué? Saludos, otra vez desde Medellín. Hoy, día 32, day 32, y también un poco cambiar el tema hoy. Hoy en la mañana estuve en el centro y necesité esperar para algunas cosas. So I was queuing, en una fila, con mucha gente y por mucho tiempo. Pero, claro, los ingleses están muy famosos por queuing, ¿sí o no? So that's our theme of the day. I'm going to discuss queuing and how we in England view this and things like queue etiquette. How to queue, why it's important, what happens if you don't queue or you don't recognise there is a queue, things like that. But if you're with me in Alma Centro or in Medellin, saludos, I understand. It was a long day. Anyway, queuing. So, yes, in England we're famous for queuing. It's something we like doing. You see this everywhere really, waiting for a bus, in the supermarket, all kinds of places. And we're quite good at marshalling the queue, in organising where you're supposed to stand and where the queue starts, where it finishes, where you are in the queue, if you're next. We can normally do this even if there isn't like an obvious sign that says queue here, if we're just waiting for something to happen or someone to come back and bring us information. We're quite good at monitoring where we are in the queue. This is important. And if you kind of like walk past and ignore the queue because you didn't pay attention that there were people waiting, then it's like, oh, excuse me, there's a queue. And you will be politely invited to join the queue. And there are different types. Like waiting at the bus stop. If you arrive at the bus stop and there's only one person, then obviously you're next in the queue. This is easy. You can choose which side of the person to stand next to them, and then you become person number 2 in the queue. But then the next person that shows up, they have a problem because they're not sure who's number 1 or number 2 in the queue. So they will have to ask, is this the queue? Well, clearly there's 2 people waiting, but is this the queue? So they know where to stand in position number 3. And then subsequent people who show up will also have to ask, is this the queue? So they know which end of the line of people to stand, so they can then be in position 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Now nowadays, obviously it's a bit easier. Like you're at the delicatessen, you get to pull a number and then you can wait wherever you like, and you're waiting for the sign to say number 5 next or whatever it is. Yeah? But sometimes we might be in like a waiting room and it's just a question of who's next. So we're not in a line and maybe we don't have a number. So this means we have to do a visual recognition check of who's in the room before we get in the room. And then depending how many people that is, note basically roughly our position amongst that group, because that's the queue. And if there's a lot of people, this might be a challenge. But it's important because if we don't do that and then we try and be next, no, not a bad feeling. But the interesting thing is it does work. Even in London on a busy afternoon when it's rush hour and everyone's trying to get home on the trains, this queuing thing gets a bit tested because obviously there's not very much space on the tube trains then if you've ever been there. And there's a whole press of people trying to leave the train, and obviously everyone wants to get back on the train. But even there, really, people still generally wait their turn, more or less. I get jostled about a bit because there's a lot of people, but it still works surprisingly well. if you go to a pub in England, and there's a lot of people, this is somewhere else where you need to be careful about where you are in the queue. So you go to the bar to order your drinks, and there might be a few people at the bar. What you have to be sure is whether this person is drinking or waiting to be served. So you have to have a quick look up down the bar to work out roughly where you are in that queue, so as not to offend anybody by getting ahead of them. Sometimes the barman might come straight to you because you're physically nearer where he is and say, oh, what would you like? Now, this is your chance to show you understood queue etiquette and say, no, I think you'll find that that gentleman is next, and redirect the barman to the right point of the queue. Because if you take advantage of that and order your drinks early in front of the queue, again, you're going to generate a lot of bad feeling for your new friends in the bar. So I wouldn't recommend that. But queuing is interesting, no? If you think about it, really, it's quite an interesting thing. I mean, we could not do it and just push people out of the way and, I want to go next. But it's an interesting thing, isn't it? It's a very sort of publicly, neighbourly, polite thing to do. And it's almost an unspoken thing, yeah? You don't have to say a lot, you just have to acknowledge that, there's a queue, where am I supposed to wait? And just wait. So it's quite a nice thing. When it works well, it helps everybody. So that's an interesting point for us to think about today. Why do we queue? Is it just because we've been conditioned to do this because our parents have told us, no, you must queue, wait here, or is it just something that we notice we get a better result of because if we do this, it's easier for everybody? I think it's more the latter. I think it's more that just by doing this, it makes things easier for everybody. It's a nice way of being helpful or kind to other people. Please know we're in the queue. You go first. This kind of thing, isn't it? An interesting point, though, yes, queuing. So yes, you need to know your place in the queue. So you have to be able to ask, is this the queue? That's a very popular question in England. Is this the queue? Because we need to know where we are in the queue. Are you next is another one. Are you next? Because you're not sure, particularly in a room of people, who's the next person? Are you next? Or I think I'm before you, or something like that. Yeah? So yeah, there we go. Think about it. Next time you're in a queue, how did you know you're in the queue? I mean, what subtle signal did you follow? Is it just because you've only got 8 items in the basket and you're at the supermarket? Or so how do you know? Think about it. Sometimes it's obvious. There's the bus stop. That's where you wait for the bus. But how do you know which side of the bus stop to queue up? How do you know? Yeah. So who makes that decision that we're going to queue this side of it or that side of it? There's things like that, yeah. Anyway, we'll leave you that thought for today. A bit esoteric, but there we go. So wherever you are, I hope you're not waiting in a queue watching this video. But if you are, I hope it's helped you pass the time a little better. And to all of my subscribers, I thank you. I hope you're enjoying the videos. I will try and make perhaps a more useful, maybe another whiteboard type one tomorrow. Forgive me, I was a bit distracted today. I was in a queue. But wherever you are, have a great evening and see you soon. Cheerio for now.